Okay, so 7-2, they confirmed, upheld the mandatory repatriation tax. The majority opinion, Kavanaugh, Roberts, Sotomayor, Kagan, Jackson, basically saying that Congress can attribute and tax the undistributed income of an American-controlled foreign corporation to its American shareholders. Concurring opinion, Justice Jackson, she agrees, but wrote separately to emphasize different aspects of the analysis. Concurring judgment from Justice Barrett, joined by Alito, concurred on the judgment, but providing different reasons. And dissenting opinion, Justice Thomas, joined by Gorsuch, they argued that the MRT is unconstitutional because it taxes unrealized income, which should not be considered income under the 16th Amendment. So this was a one-off tax in the 2017 tax law, which included a one-time charge on profits that U.S. companies held in their overseas subsidiaries as part of the transition to a new international tax system. So this one-off tax applied to the Moores because they own 10% of a foreign company. And they basically wanted to invalidate this tax, arguing that an appreciation of assets shouldn't be considered income until it's received as a payout or derived or realized. So the Moores are a couple, and they're requesting this $15,000 refund. And they had invested in this overseas company in India. And so there's a point where the Solicitor General mentions a 10% stake as having, a larger control as opposed to a 1% stakeholder. So there's what comes up is due process when you talk about attribution. The Moores had invested $40,000 in this company, Kisan Craft Machine Tools Private Limited, and it supplied farmers with basic tools, and they received shares in the company, which was started by one of their friends, Ravindra Kumar Agarwal, and this is in 2006. And so now they're disputing this $15,000 tax bill. So there's been a long-held concept from the IRS to tax unrealized gains that are attempts to evade taxes. And so there's a provision called Subpart F. It's been around since 1962 that requires U.S. shareholders in foreign corporations to pay taxes on their pro rata portions of those companies' undistributed passive income. Realization is a fundamental principle in tax law, stipulating that income must be realized before it can be taxed. This concept means that a taxpayer must have actually received or gained control over the economic benefit or profit from an asset before it can be subjected to tax. And this is when Thomas asked about what is the definition of realization. There's several precedents to illustrate the realization requirement. Helvering versus Horst, the court ruled that the bond owner realized income when he detached coupons and gave them to his son, thereby transferring the right to the income from the bonds. So this comes up in unrealized income that's taxable. Mark to markets was another one where you're taxing for an appreciation between 2 points. In this Helvering versus Horst, the court emphasized that realization does not necessarily mean receiving cash, but obtaining some form of economic benefit from the property. The concern with this case was that it had a large blast radius, and Justice Gorsuch mentioned if you open the door for Congress, they usually go through it. And so one argument the Solicitor General made was that the administrative burden in determining income would be one of the limiting principles for why you couldn't consider this as income if it's not realized. In the oral hearing, you hear the differentiation between attribution and realization. And so this 16th Amendment doesn't specify what is income in terms of imposing that formal line between a point of time. And so one of the justices brought up a hypothetical, which they like to call hypos. But the scenario is someone graduates high school, they start a business, their business appreciates to $1 billion. The point in time, the beginning and the end, above and beyond 12 months, is potentially taxable according to the Solicitor General. And so the hypothetical goes further and says, well, what is the limiting principle if there's no definition of what realization is? And so then Justice Thomas starts off the hearing by asking, what is your definition of realization? And so the enjoying a benefit from some gain, it gets into this amorphous, undefined territory, which is interesting. So they're drawing parallels with long-standing practices such as the taxation of partnerships, S corporations, where income is attributed to the partners or shareholders directly, even if not distributed. The opinion stresses that this approach is consistent with the broader tax framework, and congressional authority under the 16th Amendment does not necessitate actual receipt of income to be taxable. So it seems that Kavanaugh wanted to avoid the blast radius by opening the door to a wealth tax, and the wealth tax premises itself on taxation of unrealized income. Haig-Simmons income is the value of a person's consumption of goods and services plus the change in their net worth over a certain period. Section 61A of the IRS Code 26 defines gross income as all income from whatever source derived, including but not limited to commission, interest, property deals, and wages. So if you've made it this far through the podcast, you're either really into taxes or you're curious, but this is some boring fucking shit. And so here's the juice. Michael Jackson and the IRS took 12 years to come to a court-mediated agreement on the value of his assets. And so the three arguments against this wealth tax: one, it's unfair; two, it's unconstitutional; and three, it's an administrative burden. And I guess countries who have implemented wealth taxes have reneged or done away with it because of the administrative burden. But my question is, once AI tackles the administrative burden, doesn't that go away? So we're back to, is it unfair and is it unconstitutional? So the 16th Amendment to the United States, ratified in 1913, grants Congress the authority to impose and collect taxes on incomes, regardless of the source, without apportionment among the states or consideration of any census or enumeration. This amendment essentially overruled previous Supreme Court decisions that had limited the federal government's ability to levy income taxes uniformly across the country. Before the 16th Amendment, the Supreme Court's decision in Pollock versus Farmers Loan and Trust Company 1895 had declared that certain types of income taxes, particularly those on income from property, were direct taxes and therefore had to be apportioned according to state populations. This decision made it practically impossible to implement a federal income tax without constitutional amendment. The ratification of the 16th Amendment addressed this issue by allowing the federal government to tax income from any source without needing to apportion these taxes among the states. This change significantly expanded the federal government's revenue base and remains the foundation of the modern income tax system.